Thank you very much. Very quickly on the question of attribution, for the last 15 years I was director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, which houses the major NASA research unit, the U.S. government's major unit on solar insolation, solar forcing, and greenhouse gas forcings. They've studied this issue extensively. There is no possible claim that the observed changes of Earth's temperature are due to natural solar changes in the solar flux. It's out of the question, and it's a definitive finding that is shared in the scientific community. But I wanted to talk about the practical steps of addressing the climate agreement very quickly, because I think it's good for us to have a base shared understanding of what's at stake. In order to stay below 2 degrees, and what the climate agreement says, well below 2 degrees C, and aiming to achieve 1.5 degrees C, the greenhouse gas emissions, and mainly carbon dioxide emissions, need to go to net zero by around mid-century. So what we're talking about in order to achieve an agreement like this is essentially decarbonizing the energy system and taking effective actions in some other areas, especially agriculture, landfills, and some of the other emissions. This fact is very important to appreciate, because it gives a clear point on the horizon of where we need to head, and also a clear timing of where we need to head. Right now, 70 to 80% of the total forcings of human-induced climate change come from using coal, oil, and gas. And because of the long residence time of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the implication is that the change of temperature depends on the cumulative use of these fossil fuels. And the implication of that is, in order to achieve the targets that we've set, we have to get to zero net emissions. There are 3 parts of accomplishing that very quickly. One is energy efficiency, so you need less total energy to achieve human objectives. Or you need as less as possible so it's not wasted. Second is zero carbon electricity. This means wind, solar, hydropower, nuclear energy, biofuels, or other forms of power generation that are zero emitting. And the third aspect is to shift from direct fossil fuel use to electricity in our automobiles, in the heating of buildings, and in industrial processes. This is the basic pathway. Zero carbon electricity, electrification, and energy efficiency.
Thank you.
Every study has the same structure, that this is the path we need to the mid-century. So when you observe a debate anywhere in the world that says, should we keep a coal plant? Should we have new coal-fired power plants? Should Germany continue with its lignite plants? Should Poland use its coal? It's all within a context in which we have to get to zero. What should China do, which is a coal-based economy? What should India do, which is a coal-based economy? The challenge is relatively straightforward to explain. It's not small steps needed. It's not small measures on the margin. It's actually between now and 2060 or 2070 getting to zero. Otherwise, we miss the targets. And anything close to business as usual, we miss the targets massively. The last point that I want to say is that until the Paris Agreement Very, very few governments around the world have studied this problem in a practical way. In other words, they talked about it, they gave speeches, but they never made an analysis. What do we do in our country to actually reach zero? So we don't have a full policy agenda almost anywhere. Of course, there are the good performers, naturally, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, they've done studies. But most countries, including my own, the United States, has never made a comprehensive plan of how to get to zero. So this is the most direct, urgent thing that needs to be done, as in China and elsewhere, how to get to zero, because that's the common task that has to be achieved. And the only exceptions could be for very poor countries given extra time to do this. But since the world as a whole has to get to zero, that essentially means everybody in a time horizon of the next 40 years. I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you very much.